Congresswoman, welcome back to the program. Let's start with Iowa. Donald Trump way ahead there. New Hampshire is much closer between former President Trump and Governor Nikki Haley there too. Do you see any scenario at all, though, as this unfolds where someone other than Donald Trump is going to be the nominee?
It does not seem likely at this point, but look, stranger things have happened. But I think what you're seeing, especially with what's going on with the DOJ and the fight against keeping Trump off the ballot in a number of states, is only making his popularity soar amongst not only Republicans, but I think even those independents who are looking at this and just seeing how horrible it is that they're trying to take his name off the ballot. So I think the harder they push at him, the more the stronger that he's getting in the polls, and more people are supporting him.
Let's say Trump wins Iowa, like it looks like now, according to polls. Nikki Haley comes in very close second, maybe even wins New Hampshire. How does that change the field?
Again, it may be too early, but I think Trump has gotten a very strong lead, considering that he's not even engaging in the debates with the rest of the candidates. So I think at this point in time that Trump will be the nominee going forward this year.
Texans obviously don't vote until March 5th. You're on the ballot there as well for a third term in Congress. But do you expect that Texas Republicans are going to have multiple choices for president by the time the race gets here?
No, it depends on whether or not the other candidates decide to drop out or not. I know that there's a lot of debate and a lot of discussion this last week about whether or not Governor DeSantis was going to drop out. I don't know. If they decide to stay on, they'll have choices. If they read the writing on the wall and they say that Trump already has more support than all of the other candidates put together, they don't want to spend any more money, or their donors' money or their time, when they see that's basically a fight that's not willing to, that they're not going to be able to win, then I would say probably not. But, again, crazy campaign season. You never know.
You can't predict it, and you couldn't predict what has happened in the past. Also, I'm curious. I want to ask you about something happening in the Republican Party because we've seen this. You've seen this as well. Both Haley and DeSantis have made similar comments like this, that they say that Trump cannot win. Haley said something that I've heard from other Republicans too, and this is a quote from her. She said, "Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president, and the only way we're going to win," Haley said, "is if we have a new generational leader that leaves the negativity and the baggage behind and looks forward to the problems ahead." What's your reaction to that?
That sounds great. I haven't seen it. People complain about negative campaigning, but at the end of the day, negative campaigning actually does work. People appreciate hearing why they need to vote for a candidate, but why they don't need to vote for another candidate. I would argue that one of the reasons why Trump has gotten so much support is it's not simply Trump. He is running on his successes during his first 4 years. And when you look at those, considering that he was having to fight the Republican machine his first 2 years of office, what he was able to accomplish was considerable. People can hate his tweets all they want, but at the end of the day, when they compare what has happened under Biden in just 3 years compared to what had happened under Trump, look, you're looking at the economy, we're looking at what was happening in our border under Trump. All of those things are better. Well, the other thing that Trump, I think, brings to the table that I haven't seen from any of the other candidates is a really strong team. When you think about people like Brooke Rollins, Mike Pompeo, John Ratcliffe, those are really strong players that have got a ton of experience. They already have an agenda set up of how to save America, take it back from where we've seen it go the last 3 years. And I think that is one of the reasons why I endorsed Trump, is because not only do I want to see him back and all of his accomplishments, but I also want the team that he put together to be able to finish the job that they set out to do.
How concerned are you about all the talk that Trump might be a dictator? Liz Cheney said this might be the last vote Americans ever take.
I think it's ridiculous. I think they're doing that to get their name back out there, to hold strong and to scare people. I don't think people believe it. I think it's ridiculous. And outside of the Beltway, that's not what people are talking about. People at home are not talking about January 6th. Only people who live in DC seem to think the world revolves around Washington. The rest of the world is thinking about how much they're paying at the gas tank, how much they're paying for food. When they go out to a restaurant to get a burger, they're still paying $20, and they're not seeing that reflected in how much they're making. They look at it, if they miss a credit card payment, all of a sudden their interest rates are now in the 30% plus mark. Some are looking at not being able to get a mortgage. Some are not being able to buy a car because the inflation has increased by 17% since Biden took office. Those are things average working families and Americans are talking about, it's not some of the rhetoric that you see out of some of these politicians that are just running on campaign rhetoric.
Let's shift off and talk about what's happening in Congress, where you're getting paid to help solve problems there. Speaker Johnson reached a deal to keep the government open. It's a $1.66 trillion deal. It's more than the one that cost Speaker McCarthy his job. I know you guys have not seen all the fine particulate of this yet, but is this something you can support or is this something you oppose?
Well, look, I think we have got to get control of our spending. I think it's excessive. What we have seen in the last 3 years has just been excessive. Look, we have a $34 trillion debt right now. We added $1 trillion this past month alone. We spent over $475 billion on interest payments in 2022 alone. That's expected to skyrocket to $1.4 trillion in just 10 years. It's not sustainable. It's reckless to put that kind of debt on the future generations. We have got to change the way that we look at spending in DC. And so when I'm looking at a spending package, obviously I have not seen the bill text yet, so I've got to see what that looks like. But are we being serious about cutting down on spending? Are we setting up a debt and deficit commission that's going to be looking at it and taking apart where can we cut? Where do we have to spend? Are we looking at what's going on at the border? Because right now I haven't seen any kind of solutions that take seriously the wartime scenario that we're seeing at our border. And unless I see all those things in place, I don't know that's something I can support.
Some colleagues even talking about not ruling out Congressman Chip Roy is not even ruling out maybe replacing Speaker Johnson. Is that something you could see come to fruition?
Look, we wasted so many weeks when we should have been working on our debt, our budget, when we should have been working on our appropriations bills, going back and forth. I think Speaker Johnson is as strong as the Republican delegation is in Congress. He is, keep in mind, we've got 1/3 of the branches. Okay, we've got a Democrat-run Senate and we've got a Democrat-run presidential administration. So we're already kind of fighting an uphill battle. If we don't give him a very strong plan moving forward, they can ignore Speaker Johnson in those rooms because they know that they'll be able to get their votes on the Democrat side. We are down to a very narrow majority right now. We've got Scalise out. We've got Bill Johnson, who is going to be retiring at the end of the month. We don't have George Santos's vote now, and we lost Kevin McCarthy back in December. So we have a very, very narrow majority. We have got to make sure that we are using that and using it effectively. But as strong as we can make Speaker Johnson when he goes into those meetings to negotiate is, I think, as strong as you're going to be able to see a package come out.
You were with the speaker on the border recently. Republicans obviously demanding that President Biden do more to stop the huge flow of migration coming north into Texas and other states. But the House and Senate differ on a deal, and they have for weeks now. Do you think this is going to result in something that's actually workable and will be voted on and signed by the president?
This president continues to shock me with the things that he does that are destroying our country. So I'm not very hopeful when I look at him based on past performance in the last 3 years. But I will tell you, when you go down to the border, you talk to these sheriffs, you talk to these local officials, you talk to these landowners, they will tell you this is the worst that they've ever seen. That as soon as Biden came in, he started taking away all the programs that work to secure our border. When you think about the 10 million people who have entered our country illegally in the last 3 years, the over 100,000 people who have died as a result of fentanyl poisonings from that drug coming in over our border illegally because we are not able to have the resources on the border like we should that are being able to patrol it, because those folks, they are moving into these centers where they're just trying to get people more quickly into our country illegally. They're giving them court dates, 5 to 7 years out, where the majority of them don't go. Instead of the returning them to Mexico and having them stay there as their asylum claims are reviewed, they're releasing them into our country. I mean, Mayorkas said that there's this week, 70% of the people that are coming into our country, they're actually releasing into our country.
Yeah, I want to ask about Mayorkas in a moment here, but do you think Congress is going to be able to reach a deal on immigration?
I think right now the issue that we have to reach a deal on is on border security, not immigration, but on border security. And, you've got a ton of Democrat mayors now that are coming out finally and recognizing the damage that this does to their resources in their cities. But instead of them asking for a change in policy, they're just asking for more money from the federal government. We cannot continue to again have this level of spending, but you can't have such a flippant attitude of what's going down at the border. And what we're seeing the Biden administration, what we heard firsthand last week, was the Biden administration is actually acting as a partner to the Mexican cartels by being a logistics partner in taking these people that they bring to the border, that they're using for sex trafficking, that they're using for child trafficking, human trafficking, and they're sending them into our country. That is a problem. The Mexican cartels right now basically are the ones who are at the border and controlling the border. Yes, the Biden administration has to do something. I think that's what you're seeing on Biden's poll numbers tank so much is even Democrats at this point are recognizing the fact that this is destructive for our country.
But the president, the White House has proposed, I think, money for what, $14 billion supplemental package that would
Yeah.
put 1,300 more CBP agents on the ground down there, a separate unit for fentanyl. There are ideas on the
Yeah.
table. I'm just curious if you think that a border security solution is going to get reached maybe the next 90 days, first quarter of the year,
So a
possibly.
couple of things. So a couple of things. The House has already passed its border security deal. Is HR2. We've already passed
Months ago, right?
Months ago, over 7 months ago, we've already passed this in the White House and the senator sitting on it. But that included provisions for ending catch and release, for continuing to build the wall, for supporting local and state law enforcement officers to work on that as partners, and in turning people away at the border and stopping the incentivizing. But the $14 billion package that the president has proposed, the majority of that is giveaways that incentivize more and more illegals to come to our borders. It's giving away money, even cash incentives to these folks. And the people that they want to hire are not people to patrol our border and to send people back. The people that they want to hire is to actually, again, more quickly expedite illegal immigrants into our country. I don't think that is securing our border. I think that's making us a lot weaker, which is why you are seeing us fight back. We had a solution in HR2, which, by the way, a lot of us didn't think was strong enough. When I start thinking about what is causing the problems at our border, it's cartels. And I really wanted to have a mechanism, strategy to be able to deal with the cartels and recognize, again, this is a wartime scenario that's happening at our border. We need to engage with our military, and we need to be able to have ways of being able to go after the cartels, just like we did to terrorists in the Middle East, because we're seeing, again, over 100,000 people who have been murdered as a result of what's happening at our border. It didn't have that. So the HR2 provision was a really good start. It had a lot of input. It had a lot of debate that went with it. It has been languishing over in the Senate. And the president nor the Democrat-run Senate seems to think that it's important enough to pick up.
You see a compromise at all with the Senate on getting something passed?
I think we're going to have to. The question is Speaker Johnson going to have enough support going into that room where he's able to? Again, we've got one vote majority at this point. We have to make sure that we're sending him in with the strongest deal possible, that they recognize that this is a House vote, that it's not, that we're not going to have just a couple of Republicans that go over and vote with Democrats, because that's my understanding. The Democrats are probably going to support this.
Congresswoman, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you being there and letting Texans know what's going on in DC, and also helping me figure out what's going on elsewhere around. So thank you very much, and Happy New Year.